She didn't leave a note, not even a text. Just an empty closet, her wedding ring in a crystal dish, and a photograph flipped face down on the dresser. That morning I had kissed her goodbye like any other Tuesday. That night I came home to silence so loud it cracked something in me. Then the final blow, her voice, sweet and laughing, echoing through my phone, wrapped around another man's arm, calling him her soulmate. She didn't just leave, she erased me. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from every corner of the world. Your thoughts and comments are what make this community so special, and we're truly grateful to have you here. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story filled with drama, resilience, and unexpected twists. Now settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. The apartment still smelled like her perfume fig and cedar, and for a split second I thought maybe she was in the shower. But the silence stretched. The drawers were half open. Hangers rattled softly in the closet like wind chimes. That's when it hit me. She was gone, and she hadn't even cared to hide it. My name is Daniel Kane. I build real estate portfolios for the kinds of people who don't ask what something costs. They ask how quickly I can make it exclusive. Luxury isn't an indulgence in my world. It's a weapon. And yet I never saw the ambush coming from the person who used my last name. Mireille and I had been married 5 years. She was a brand strategist, one of those women who could walk into any room and instantly know which camera angle worked best. Her social media was a curated dream of gallery openings, rooftop dinners, and whispered sponsorships. I used to think we were aligned. Now I realized I had just been part of the backdrop. 3 hours after I found the ring, her face lit up my feed. A tagged video. Meet Jackson Mirren. The caption read, Visionary CEO. The man who made me believe again. She was curled against him in a white jumpsuit, smiling like she'd finally arrived. Like I was the layover. The comments were nauseating OMG power couple. This is what real love looks like. Daniel who? That night I sat alone in a multi-million-dollar penthouse I designed myself, and I couldn't stop staring at the flipped-over photo on our dresser. It was from our anniversary in Tulum sunset behind us, her head on my shoulder. I remember how warm her hand had been that night tucked inside mine. Now all that warmth was branded on someone else's feed. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there cold and alert, as if my body had gone into architectural mode. Blueprint thinking. I realized I had 2 choices: react like a husband, or respond like a builder. And I build very carefully. I stayed silent for 48 hours. Didn't call. Didn't message. I let the story she crafted play out in public. I watched it gain traction like a stock I already knew was about to crash. Then I did what I do best. I got to work. Silence has a texture. It thickens when you fill it with suspicion, hardens when truth begins to echo. By day 3, my grief had calcified into something sharper. Cold, quiet focus. I wasn't going to chase her. I was going to understand how deep her betrayal ran. Mireille and I shared multiple holdings, on paper at least. When we married, I'd been smart enough to protect my primary assets. But I'd made concessions, too. We co-invested in a West Village condo flip. She handled a few of our LLC filings, mostly for appearances. I never expected her to weaponize them. I logged into our joint property accounts cross-checking movement over the past 3 months. At first glance, everything looked routine: mortgage payments, HOA fees, vendor transfers. but there buried between two renovation invoices was a subtle withdrawal flagged Linnea Holdings. I didn't recognize the name. A quick search showed it wasn't one of our firms. It was offshore, registered in Barbados. Shell Corporation. I leaned back in my chair, heart suddenly too loud in my ears. That name appeared again, this time on a loan disbursement pulled from our shared HELOC. The amount was just under the threshold for alerts, $48,500. Not enough to trigger attention, just enough to go unnoticed if you weren't looking. But I was. She hadn't just left. She'd been planning it. I dialed Rachel, my longtime legal counsel. She's the kind of attorney who reads every clause twice and doesn't blink under pressure. I didn't tell her everything, just that I needed eyes on anything tied to Linnea Holdings fast. Within 24 hours, Rachel sent back a summary. Mireille had co-signed 2 quiet amendments to our existing LLC contracts, shifting voting rights temporarily to a silent partner. That partner was Jackson, or as the forms listed him, Jackson Mirren, Executive Director, Linnea Holdings. She'd been gifting him legal access to my investment channels under the guise of portfolio expansion. I felt a wave of nausea. It wasn't just cheating, it was collusion. Rachel, ever discreet, didn't ask personal questions. She simply said, "We can shut this down quietly, but you'll need to revoke her access formally before they try to leverage anything else." I thanked her and ended the call. That night I sat by the floor-to-ceiling window and scrolled through Mireille's social media feed. Her newest post was a dreamy reel, her barefoot on a balcony in Malibu, glass of wine in hand, panning to Jackson, who toasted the camera with a wink. "Your life reflects your choices," the caption read. I finally chose me. No, she didn't. She chose theft dressed up as freedom. She chose illusion over intimacy. She chose a man who didn't build, he schemed. A man who had never risked anything of his own. But I wasn't going to post cryptic quotes or rage into the void. I was going to make it so that by the time she realized what she'd done, there'd be nothing left for her to hold on to. The day I revoked everything, the sky was overcast gray, uncommitted, like it hadn't decided whether to rain or hold back. It felt appropriate. I wasn't storming out. I wasn't collapsing in grief. I was executing a plan. Mireille didn't know it yet, but her access to everything I built was about to disappear. I started with the easy parts. Cards, accounts, passwords wiped. My assistant Brianna had standing instructions from years ago. If I ever say code gray, execute full revocation. She didn't ask questions when I texted her that morning. Next, the properties. Our West Village flip was jointly filed, but the primary ownership was mine. What Mireille didn't realize was that she'd signed a waiver 3 months prior, part of a refinancing package I'd prepared to consolidate our lines of credit. She never read the fine print. She never expected the foundation she stood on would be pulled out from beneath her. Using that document, I revoked her rights on the condo clean, legal, irreversible. I didn't even need to notify her directly. The firm would send an automated email. She'd open it mid-latte, maybe during a shoot, and watch her world shrink by one address. Rachel coordinated the filings with silent precision. No alarms, no noise. She didn't enjoy the work, but she respected the strategy. "If you want to add a restraining clause on future transfers," she said, "now's the time." "Not yet," I told her. Let her feel the silence first. Then came the real cut, the digital portfolio. Mireille had been granted limited access to my private holdings dashboard. Nothing she could touch directly, but enough to flaunt in conversations, enough to appear equal. I pulled her viewing rights. The dashboard would now show a locked screen if she tried to log in. Just one sentence: access restricted. Please contact the administrator. By mid-afternoon, the damage was done. Quietly. Surgically. She still hadn't noticed. Later that evening, I checked her stories. She posted a soft focus reel of her twirling barefoot on a beach patio, waves crashing in the background, champagne in hand. Jackson was grilling behind her, shirtless, mouthing the lyrics to some summer anthem. The caption read, "Never been freer. Real love doesn't control it, uplifts." The irony hit like a punchline. She didn't know she'd just lost access to the very assets she was bragging about. The patio was a rental. The champagne, probably billed to my Amex, now cancelled. The man behind her, a paper king with no land. Still, I said nothing. Power isn't loud. It's quiet. It's structural. It doesn't need to be declared, it simply holds when everything else crumbles. That night I cooked dinner alone. 1 steak, 1 glass of Barolo, 1 candle. I wasn't celebrating. I was observing. There's a moment just before a building is demolished when everything goes still, when the air thickens, waiting for the fall. Mireille had set the charges. She just didn't realize they were under her feet. You can tell a lot about a man by how he handles exposure, how he reacts when the mask slides and the world finally sees what he was trying to hide. I knew I wouldn't have to say a word. Jackson's truth was already rotting beneath the shine he sold. All I had to do was let the light hit it. Rachel's team moved fast. Within 48 hours of pulling Linea Holdings' documentation, she confirmed my suspicions Jackson Mirren didn't exist. Not in the way Mireille thought he did. His legal name was Ziad Harani. No verified real estate license, no acquisitions under his name, not even a traceable portfolio. He was a ghost with a LinkedIn full of buzzwords and blurry press photos from rented event stages. A con artist. Rachel said, "He's smart. He uses shadow LLCs to partner with legitimate developers, just enough to appear legitimate. But he's never built anything. Not even a garage." Mireille had fallen in love with a vapor trail. Still, I didn't call her. I didn't send her the documents. I needed her to keep posting, smiling, boasting. I needed her to believe it was all real, just long enough. My opportunity came in the form of a charity gala at the Harmont Hotel, an event I helped fund annually. I hadn't planned to attend this year, but when I saw Soraya Lynette, Mireille's influencer best friend, post a teaser hinting at a power couple debut, I decided to show up. I didn't need to crash it. I was already on the board. I walked in solo. Classic tux. Calm. The usual nods and murmurs followed developers, bankers, gallery owners. The usual suspects. And then I saw them. Mireille, radiant, in a metallic gown holding court near the fountain. Jackson beside her in a velvet blazer, talking too loud and gesturing like he owned the place. Cameras loved them. People whispered. That was her game optics over origin. At first they didn't see me. I didn't move closer. I just waited. Then Soraya whipped out her phone and started streaming live. Jackson, preening, tried to walk them into the VIP lounge. But the guard, a man I knew personally, stepped forward. "Sorry, sir. You're not on the access list." Jackson laughed like it was a joke. "You must be new here. I'm Jackson Mirren. No record of that name, sir." Soraya turned the camera to Mireille, who looked confused. Then Jackson pulled out his phone, probably to flash some fake credential. But the guard stayed firm. Guests began to notice. Phones came out. Someone whispered, "Is that the guy from that startup pitch that went nowhere? Soraya cut the live." Mireille's smile cracked. I caught her eye across the room. Just for a second, she looked like someone who'd just realized the man beside her didn't have a parachute, and they were already mid-air. I didn't approach. I just turned and walked toward the gallery wing. I'd made my point without saying a word. Later that night, as expected, the incident began to ripple online. Reddit threads, private discords, TikTok sleuths. Someone posted a clip with the caption, "CEO turned away from his own event." Mireille posted nothing that night, and for the first time since she left, I slept through the night. By morning, the clip from the gala had racked up nearly 400,000 views. A security guard's firm, you're not on the list, echoed through every corner of the internet. Comments flooded in part mockery, part curiosity, but none of them kind. For the first time, Jackson's image was cracking, and Mireille's once gilded presence now looked desperate. Still, they tried to spin it. Soraya posted a follow-up reel. "Real power doesn't need velvet ropes. We're building something bigger than the old world." Jackson reposted it with a fire emoji and some pseudo-philosophical quote about disruption. It was sloppy, and sloppiness leaves trails. That's when I decided to escalate. I didn't need vengeance, I needed exposure. And the IRS tends to frown on untraceable wires tied to unregistered business partners. I met with Jonah Lynn, my private forensic accountant. Brilliant, surgical, and loyal. I handed him everything, every contract Mireille had ever touched, every dime she'd moved in or out of our shared financial ecosystem. "Start with Linnea Holdings," I told him, "but follow every thread. If it smells like fraud, I want to see it." Jonah barely blinked. "Give me 48 hours. Meanwhile, Mireille tried to get ahead of the damage. Her stories returned sponsored content, over-filtered wellness shots, and vague affirmations. Jackson, less composed, posted a smirking selfie with the caption, "They can't blacklist what they can't control." It was almost sad. Then came the kicker. Soraya went live during a brunch event. Champagne Flute's brand rep's perfectly framed bites. And in the background, barely audible over the lounge music, someone mentioned, "That's the guy who got blocked from the Harmont. I heard his portfolio's fake." Soraya froze. The camera shook slightly before she cut the stream, but the internet had already clipped it. Within the hour, a thread popped up titled, "Is Jackson Mirren a total fraud?" It included screenshots, video receipts, and an old podcast appearance where his answers were suspiciously vague, especially when asked to name a single completed property. That's when things started to slide fast. Rachel called me 2 days later. "You're going to want to hear this." She forwarded an internal compliance report from one of our third-party vendors. Turns out Mireille and Jackson had funneled consulting fees from our Soho development into a dummy firm, one that never showed up in the original contract. The name, Mirau Strategies. Mireille plus Jackson. They'd created a ghost company using our project's money. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to be criminal. "Do we go public?" Rachel asked. "Not yet," I said. "Let them think they're still winning," because I knew the next step would be humiliation of their own making. I sent an anonymous tip to a journalist I trusted. Not for a story, just enough breadcrumbs to stir interest without touching me. Then I waited. And sure enough, the next time Soraya went live, the comments were brutal. "Where's the proof he's real? Thought y'all owned that hotel. Y'all lied?" She panicked. Cut the stream mid-sentence. The power couple facade was unraveling, and I hadn't even lifted a finger in public yet. On the surface, Mireille was still dancing. Her curated world hadn't crumbled yet. Brunches, reels, blurry sunsets, gratitude captions, business as usual. But behind the pixels, the walls were starting to crack. Jonah called me at 7:03 a.m. I never get calls before 9 unless something's on fire. They used 3 offshore accounts, he said, without preamble. 1 in Barbados, 2 in the Caymans. all linked to Linnea Holdings and Mirao Strategies. None are declared. All moved funds from your Soho build. How much north of $620,000? Possibly more. I felt my jaw lock. Any evidence she knew Jonah hesitated. Every transfer was signed off with her full digital ID, including encryption keys only she had access to. That was it. Not just betrayal, criminal betrayal. But I still didn't act. Instead, I sent Rachel one message: initiate silent freeze. Full scope. In legal terms, that meant Mireille and any entities connected to her could no longer move money assets or legal interests tied to my portfolio. Not without my signed release. She would try. And she would hit a wall over and over. That afternoon, I received a call from an unknown number. I answered. Mireille. There was a pause before she spoke, like she was trying to measure her voice. Dan, she began soft. Something weird is going on with the accounts. I'm locked out of Linnea. And the Mirao transfers. I don't know. I think there's a glitch. A glitch. I let the silence stretch. Then I replied, Have you spoken to your soulmate? He should know how to fix that. She inhaled sharply. You knew. I knew the moment I saw your ring sitting in a bowl like it was a tip. Her tone changed. Defensive now. It wasn't what you think. Jackson, he had ideas. He wanted to build something real. I believed in him. Then believe in him now, I said calmly. Because what you built together is about to collapse. I ended the call. 10 minutes later, Jackson posted a story him drinking coffee, saying, Energy vampires will try to dim your light. Stay radiant. It would have been funny if it weren't so pitiful. The next morning, I got a message from a journalist. The investigation had picked up steam. An anonymous source had confirmed Jackson's entire credential profile was fraudulent. Degrees, licenses, even one of his business references, all fake. The article dropped that evening. Headline, The Mirage of Jackson Mirren, How One Man Conned the Elite and Got Burned. It didn't mention Mireille by name. But everyone connected the dots. Her page went private. Soraya removed all photos. Sponsors began pulling back. One by one, the lights started going out on her perfect little digital stage, and I made dinner. 1 steak, 1 glass of wine. The same ritual. But this time I smiled. They had built an empire out of illusion, and I had quietly installed the demolition charges. It came at 6:47 p.m., just as I was reviewing the final quarter financials. A name I hadn't seen in years flashed across my phone screen. Douglas Whitford Mireille's personal attorney from her influencer brand days. We'd shaken hands once years ago when she signed with a luxury skincare label. Back then, he was polished, courteous, and transactional. Today, his tone was clipped uneasy. Daniel. I'm reaching out on Mireille's behalf, he began. Is this a legal matter? There was a pause. Not formally. Yet. Then I'll assume this is a courtesy call. Speak. He hesitated, likely unused to the reversal of leverage. She's in a situation. You've revoked her access to all shared properties and assets. There are rumors circulating and potential brand partners are withdrawing. And she's willing to negotiate a soft landing. If certain restrictions are eased, she's prepared to sign over all claims in return for a public statement, mutual respect, amicable parting, that sort of thing. I almost laughed. She wants me to validate the house of cards she helped build, to preserve her brand. I think, he said carefully, she's realizing the gravity of what's happened. No, she's realizing the optics are no longer in her favor. I ended the call before he could respond. The next morning, Rachel sent over a file. Her team had completed their audit of Mireille's misappropriations. Not only had she funneled funds to Linnea and Miro, but she'd also attempted to register a trademark using funds siphoned from my legacy trust, a trust meant for our daughter Ava. That was it. The final thread. I called Rachel, activate the clause. She knew which one. The family protection clause we built into my trust years ago, designed to shield Ava's inheritance from any legal or personal threats. By invoking it, Mireille would be permanently barred from touching anything tied to that legacy. Rachel filed the papers within the hour. That night, Mireille texted me. Mireille, you're going too far. This is still my life too. I stared at the message for a long time. Me. No. It was your illusion, and it's over. She didn't respond. 2 days later, the media storm escalated. An exposé dropped on Jackson's former investors. Turns out several were pressing charges. A civil suit was underway. His aliases were unspooling like Yarn, Zach Hart, Jameson Liar, even a fake PhD listed on a speaker bio. And Mireille. She posted one last story, a black screen with white text that read, "Taking time offline. Be kind to each other." Comments were disabled. I watched it once, then archived it in a folder labeled Endings. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't made a scene. But I had done what she never expected. I removed her without ever needing to chase her down. And in doing so, I reclaimed something bigger than a reputation. I reclaimed my narrative. Silence is a strange kind of justice. No public spectacle, no harsh confrontation, just the steady erosion of influence, the quiet dismantling of power. That's how it felt watching Mireille's digital empire slip into static. First went the brand sponsors. One by one, they scrubbed her from their feeds, archived posts, removed tags, canceled collabs. Even the boutique hotel that once flew her to St. Barth's posted a cryptic update. We no longer work with individuals who do not align with our values. Then came the content creators, the same ones who once gushed about her lifestyle, her inspiration, her love story. Now they distanced themselves. Some even deleted joint videos. The silence was louder than any smear campaign. Jackson predictably tried to salvage his image. He posted a long-winded IGTV video from what looked like a mid-tier co-working space. The walls were bare, the lighting terrible. He wore a hoodie and spoke in that faux wounded voice scammers always use once caught. This was all a misunderstanding, a coordinated attack. I've always been about transparency, building real communities, real wealth. The comments were brutal. No one bought it. The top-liked response simply read, "Show us one deed, bro." He took the video down in under an hour. Meanwhile, Jonah sent me the final trace reports. Jackson had attempted to reroute several payments to a crypto wallet in Belize right after the exposé dropped. Too late. The system flagged him. Authorities were already watching. As for Mireille, I received no more texts, no calls. But I saw what I needed to see. The apartment she once flaunted, leased under her name, was back on the market. Her closet fire sale had begun quietly through a consignment agency. She hadn't vanished, but she was shrinking. Fast. Then something unexpected happened. Ava, our daughter, called me. She was 10 wise beyond her years, and rarely asked questions about her mother. But that evening her voice was soft when she said, "Daddy, why doesn't Mommy live in the fancy place anymore?" I paused. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that don't last. And sometimes the truth takes a little while to show up. Is she okay? She's learning. Just like we are. Ava didn't need details. Just clarity. She was my reason for every silent move I made. Not revenge, not pride. Protection. Legacy. Truth. That weekend, we went to the park. She wore a bright yellow hoodie and made me chase her until I couldn't breathe. I laughed more in those 2 hours than I had in the last year. Later, we stopped for ice cream. A stranger tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, aren't you the guy from that architecture piece in Urban Weekly Beautiful Work? Your designs make the city feel alive." I thanked him and looked at Ava. "Did you hear that I smiled?" She nodded, grinning through a mouthful of strawberry swirl. In that moment, I realized something profound. I hadn't just removed Mireille and Jackson. I'd rebuilt myself quietly, solidly, without the noise of performance. And that silence, it wasn't just justice. It was peace. Mireille had always been good at curating an image. Even as the narrative shifted against her, she still clung to the edges of relevance, liking posts that hinted at new beginnings, resharing cryptic quotes about forgiveness and betrayal. But she never named names. She never admitted. She never apologized. Then came the subpoena. Jonah had warned me it might happen. Once the civil fraud suit against Jackson expanded, anyone connected to his financial dealings became fair game. Mireille wasn't just his partner in crime, she was listed on paperwork signatures and LLC ownership filings. Her name wasn't just involved, it was embedded. She didn't call me, but Rachel forwarded the scanned document anyway. Mireille A. Landon is hereby requested to appear regarding financial misconduct tied to Linea Holdings and Miro Strategies. The day after the notice arrived, her account went completely dark. No profile photo, no stories, no healing journey updates. Gone. And then came the fallout. An article in Insider Weekly detailed the rise and collapse of the digital trust couple Mireille and Jackson's faux real estate dreams and the influencer economy that had propped them up. They even used a screenshot from Soraya's botched brunch live stream. Worse still, a former contractor came forward claiming unpaid invoices and forged endorsement letters. That's when sponsors really began pulling away. Jackson, for his part, doubled down. He launched a pitiful attempt at damage control, a YouTube channel promising to reveal the truth about real estate gatekeeping, all while peddling online masterclasses for $299 a pop. Rachel called it the final flail. But I wasn't watching them anymore. Not really. My attention had turned inward to the restoration of everything they tried to destabilize. Ava's school had invited me to speak at Career Day. Normally, Mireille would have swept in oversized sunglasses, curated anecdotes. But this time it was just me. I walked in with blueprints, photos of our Soho project, and a model of a building I'd been sketching for over a year, a mixed-use community center with low-income housing built directly beneath rooftop greenhouses. As I spoke, I looked over and saw Ava in the front row, eyes wide, beaming. That moment eclipsed everything. It wasn't about showing I'd won, it was about building something no one could take apart. Later that evening, I received a text from an unknown number. "You really made it impossible for me to breathe. Was that your plan?" No name, but I knew who it was. Mireille. "No," I replied. "That was your own reflection." She didn't respond. Instead, Soraya dropped a video the next morning. It was filmed in a bare apartment, cheap curtains fluttering behind her. She cried through most of it, claimed she had no idea what Jackson had really been doing, claimed Mireille had manipulated everyone. But the comments weren't forgiving. "Y'all were in on it until it stopped paying. You filmed your lies in HD. You can't backpedal in 480p. One by one, the world they'd created collapsed, not in fire, not in fury, but in slow, quiet decay." And I returned to my drawings. Because while they chased optics, I built substance. While they posed, I planned. And now that the fallout had begun, I had no intention of looking back. The courtroom wasn't grand, just rows of oak benches and the low hum of fluorescent lighting, but it felt like a stage. Not for me. For them. For what they thought they could perform. Mireille sat at the defendant's table, her expression scrubbed clean. No makeup, hair pulled back in a low bun. She looked deliberately plain, as if humility could be worn like a costume. Jackson was nowhere in sight. His lawyer claiming health complications had delayed his appearance. Their attorneys tried to project control, leaning on jargon and procedural delays. But the judge wasn't moved. He cut through it all with a tone that suggested he'd seen every excuse and every trick in the book. The charges weren't criminal yet. This was civil. But the stakes were still brutal restitution asset seizures, frozen accounts, and a pending review by federal fraud investigators. I watched from the gallery, silent. Rachel sat beside me, flipping calmly through case notes. "They're aiming for a delay tactic," she whispered. "Stall the civil case long enough to reach private settlements." "They won't," I said. "Too many parties now. Too many people burned." The plaintiff list had grown vendors, contractors, investors, even former sponsors who claimed they'd been sold lies under fraudulent pretenses. The damage rippled far beyond my world. Then came the surprise. Mireille requested to speak. Her attorney hesitated, but allowed it. She stood clearing her throat. "Your Honor, I was misled. I believed in Jackson's vision. I trusted the documentation. I had no reason to doubt him, or the business model we built together." There it was, the carefully curated script, victimhood draped in sincerity. She continued, voice shaking at all the right places. "I never intended harm. I simply wanted to create something meaningful. I lost myself in a dream, one I thought was real. For a moment the room softened. Even the judge leaned back, absorbing the theater. But I didn't flinch. Because I knew the truth. She hadn't been a passenger. She'd been the engine. When it was Rachel's turn to speak, she stood with calm precision. No dramatics. Just facts. She signed every contract. She co-founded the LLC. She diverted funds into personal ventures using shell companies under her maiden name. This wasn't naivety. It was orchestration. The courtroom held its breath. The judge nodded slowly. "We'll proceed to the evidentiary hearing, but I advise all counsel to prepare for federal escalation. This case is not going away quietly." Outside reporters waited. Cameras buzzed. I ignored them. But Mireille didn't. She stopped briefly at the courthouse steps, turned slightly, and posed just for a moment. Old habits die hard. I saw the flash of the lens. One final snapshot of a woman still trying to script her downfall into sympathy. That evening, her photo made the rounds. The headline was "Merciless from Glam to Guilt, Mireille Landon faces the music." I stared at the image on my screen, then closed the tab. Because her story wasn't mine anymore. And this trial, it wasn't just about justice. It was about ending a mirage. It was surreal, watching her walk into the deposition room. Gone were the heels, the designer bag, the shimmer in her stride. She wore flats, a blazer 2 sizes too big, and the same expression I'd seen the night she left, when she thought she was rising into a better life. Mireille didn't meet my eyes as she sat down across the table. Her attorney hovered, murmuring quiet instructions. Mine did the same. But the moment didn't need lawyers. It was already written. She looked thinner, not physically, spiritually, like someone who'd been standing in front of a mirror for too long and found no reflection staring back. I expected her to start with defensiveness or a practiced apology. She didn't. She simply said, "I didn't think it would all fall apart." I nodded. That's the thing about illusions. They look solid until you step inside. The room was still. The court reporter scribbled. The tension buzzed just beneath our skin. I really thought I could reinvent myself, she said, eyes darting toward the window. Jackson made it seem possible. He told me you were holding me back, that I could be more. And you believed him. She looked down. I needed to. Silence. I could have railed against her, thrown facts in her face. But I didn't. Because none of that would undo what had been done. So instead I asked, where is he now? Her lips curled slightly bitter. Gone. Disconnected all his accounts. Lawyers haven't heard from him in 2 weeks. Even the crypto wallet we used has been emptied. I leaned back. So the dream ended. No, she whispered. The lie ended. The dream never existed. It was the most honest thing she'd said in years. The rest of the deposition was procedural. She confirmed timelines, bank records, emails, and agreements. Her voice stayed steady, but I could see the toll. Every admission pulled another thread from the identity she had stitched together. When it was done, she stood. Daniel, I know it's too late for sorry, but I hope someday Ava will understand I wasn't always this version of myself. I met her eyes, calm but firm. Then you'd better start becoming someone else. She blinked hard, then nodded once and left the room without another word. Rachel and I stayed behind. She's unraveling, Rachel said. But she's not done clinging. I know. She won't fade quietly. And she didn't. That night, Mireille posted again. Not on her old account that was still deactivated, but on a new one. Anonymous handle, minimal followers. No branding. Just one photo, a black and white image of a cracked mirror on a floor. The caption read, "Sometimes what breaks is what you built around the truth." I showed it to Rachel. She shrugged. Vanity rebranded as introspection. She's still chasing the narrative. But I wasn't chasing anymore. I had court orders in place. Ava's trust protected. My business stabilized. My name cleared. Mireille could post 1,000 reflections. But I had become a man who didn't need one to stand firm. The final meeting was scheduled for 9:00 a.m. at a midtown firm with frosted glass doors and the kind of minimalist decor meant to evoke trust. I arrived 10 minutes early. Rachel was already there organizing the paperwork, her tone clipped and efficient. She didn't ask how I felt. She didn't need to. Mireille arrived 5 minutes late. She entered alone, no assistant, no lawyer. Her hair was pulled back and she wore the same neutral palette she had adopted since the collapse. The transformation was almost convincing. Almost. She nodded at me. Daniel, have a seat. The room was sterile, but the tension was not. On the table lay the final settlement documents, a legal separation of all financial ties, the surrender of her interest in every shared venture, and most important, her signature renouncing any future claim to Ava's trust or estate. Rachel slid the first set of pages across the table. Initial here, here, and here, then full signature at the end. Mireille picked up the pen. Her hand trembled slightly, barely enough to see, but I noticed. Maybe she thought this was her last moment of control. Maybe she thought she could still sway the ending. She signed. 1 page at a time, one concession after another. Her name once a brand, now just ink on paper. When it was done, she placed the pen down and looked up at me. That's everything then, yeah. I won't get to see Ava again, will I? I didn't flinch. You made that decision long before I had to. She's still my daughter. She's still a child. One who deserves peace. Not your chaos. Mireille nodded slowly, as if absorbing a truth she'd tried to dodge for too long. I thought love was enough. No, I said, standing. Love is a starting line. What comes after is character. She didn't follow me out. As I stepped into the elevator, I didn't feel triumph. I felt weight lift. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. Outside, the spring sun filtered through the high-rises. A breeze stirred the edge of my blazer. I pulled out my phone and texted Ava's nanny. "Free the rest of the day. Let's surprise her after school." Then I headed to the flower shop down the street. Ava liked peonies bright pink, full of life. I ordered 2 bouquets, one for her, and one for the woman I'd become proud to remember, my late mother. The woman Mireille had once mocked for being too ordinary. I thought of her now. Thought of her kindness, her strength, her quiet dignity. Mireille would be a footnote. Ava would be the future. And me, I was no longer the man left behind in a penthouse full of broken promises. I was the man who chose what came next. When I picked Ava up, she ran into my arms with the same warmth she always did. "Daddy, you're early. Thought we'd celebrate what new beginnings." She grinned, and I knew deep in the marrow of my bones that I had done what needed to be done. Not just for justice, but for love, for legacy, for life. Months passed. Life found its rhythm again. Ava was thriving in school, our Soho project broke ground, and for the first time in years, mornings felt like beginnings, not recoveries. Then the notification hit my phone. Someone had tagged me in a video. I tapped out of instinct only to see her face again. Mireille. She was back. Not on her old platforms, but on a new one, some indie storytelling app for rebuilding brands through vulnerability. The video opened with dim lighting, acoustic piano, and her voice soft, remorseful, carefully measured. "Hi, everyone. I've been away, not just from social media, but from myself." She spoke about growth therapy trauma, claimed she had been misled, that she had taken accountability, that she was now focused on helping women rediscover themselves after public failures. It was glossy, scripted, clean, and it was trending. People were divided. Half were praising her courage and honesty. The other half dragged her for returning to the same space she once weaponized. I closed the app. By evening, my inbox was full of messages. "Did you see Mireille's comeback?" "Bro, she's spinning the whole thing." "Are you gonna respond?" No. I wasn't. But then Ava asked. We were making pancakes when she looked up and said, "Is Mommy famous again?" I froze. She posted a new video. Lily at school showed me. I put the spatula down. "What do you think about it?" Ava shrugged. "She looks different, but not real, like when someone wears too much makeup in a movie." I smiled faintly. "That's called acting." She nodded and went back to her pancake castle. That night I did respond. Not online, not with shade or spite. I crafted a short piece for Modern Architect, a personal essay titled "Structures That Don't Collapse." I talked about design legacy rebuilding, not just buildings, but lives. I never mentioned her name. I didn't have to. The editor called it one of their most read essays of the year. A week later, Mireille posted again, this time crying. She spoke of trolls, of the pressure of how hard it was to return to the world. But the views weren't the same. The comments thinned. The novelty faded. Mireille had tried to resurrect herself in a space that only remembered the ghost of her downfall. And ghosts don't hold attention for long. Meanwhile, I walked Ava to her ballet recital, sat in the front row with flowers, watched her spin and stumble and beam under the spotlight. Afterward, we got ice cream. She said, "You're always there, Daddy." "Always," I said, because that was the difference. I didn't need a platform. I had presence. And that kind of comeback, it doesn't fade. Fall came quietly that year. The leaves in Central Park turned a soft, weary amber, and the wind carried that peculiar crispness that makes you think of fresh starts. Ava and I had built a routine brisk walks to school weekend movie nights, puzzles half finished on the dining table. I thought it was over, until the email arrived. It came from a private domain. No sender name. Just the subject. You should know what she did next. I almost deleted it, assuming it was spam, but something about the phrasing felt too pointed. I clicked. Attached was a screenshot. Mireille, in a hotel lounge in Miami, sitting beside a man with a familiar face, Jackson. No disguises, no public distancing. Just the two of them, cocktails in hand, smiling at a third person across the table. The timestamp was recent. So much for therapy. So much for redemption. I stared at the photo for a long time. Rachel saw the look on my face during our check-in call. "What is it?" I forwarded the email. She called back instantly. "That's him, no doubt. And she's with him again publicly, openly. Why would she risk it after everything she's not risking? She's choosing." Rachel exhaled. "Do you want to respond?" "No," I said. "But I will prepare." It didn't take long. Within days, whispers started circulating online. Not from Mireille this time, but from the people around her. Former collaborators, stylists, minor influencers, all hinting at a new luxury startup she was helping launch with a visionary partner. The language was recycled, the branding eerily familiar. Same script, different city. They were at it again. This time I took a different approach. I reached out to 3 former victims of Jackson's scams, connected them with my attorney, quietly encouraged them to submit renewed complaints to Florida's Financial Crimes Division. Rachel coordinated everything. "I'm not chasing them," I said. "I'm just making sure the foundation shakes under them before they can finish the first floor." The press picked it up quickly. Shady duo reemerges in Miami. Venture past scandals resurface. Mireille didn't respond publicly, but her co-founder, some naive venture bro, issued a shaky video insisting they were fully compliant and targeted by jealous competitors. It backfired. Within a week, the funding pipeline dried up. 2 investors pulled out. The Instagram page went dark. It didn't crash loud. It just unraveled. Silently. And that silence. That was the justice. Because for people like Mireille and Jackson, silence is the one thing they can't monetize. No clicks, no comments, no attention. I didn't rejoice. I simply sat with Ava that night while she painted her dreams across construction paper splatters of pink, gold, and blue. "Are you going to build that for real, Daddy?" I smiled. "Maybe one day, when the timing's right." Because I wasn't done building. I was just getting better at choosing what deserved to last. It had been almost a year since Mireille left. A full circle of seasons of courtrooms, headlines, breakdowns, and rebuilds. And yet when I stood on the balcony of our new home, a modest brownstone tucked in the Upper West Side, it all felt like a dream I'd finally woken up from. The air was still, crisp. Below me, Ava was laughing in the courtyard, chasing bubbles that her nanny blew into the gold-tinged afternoon. Her laugh had returned. That natural melodic sound children make when they feel safe. And for the first time in a long while, I knew I had won. Not with revenge, not with destruction, but with peace. Mireille had disappeared again. After the Miami unraveling, there were no more comebacks, no more anonymous posts or dramatic black-and-white videos. No sightings. Just silence. Like she'd finally realized that every attempt at resurrection only dragged her further down. Her accounts were dormant. Her name faded from the algorithm. No features, no invites, no interest. And Jackson arrested in Barcelona 6 weeks ago. Wire fraud. Extradition pending. The headlines barely made a ripple. The world had moved on. So had I. I had begun writing again, nothing public, just pages in a leather journal, sketches of stories of buildings of fatherhood. Rachel said I should publish, but I wasn't there yet. Some things I realized were best kept sacred. That evening, I took Ava out for dinner. Her favorite diner, the one with the silver booths and jukebox that never worked. She ordered pancakes again. I let her. Halfway through, she looked up at me. "Do you miss her?" The question landed softly, but it carried weight. I set my fork down. I miss who I thought she was, not who she became. Ava considered that. "Do you think people change?" "Yes," I said, "but not always in the direction we hope." She nodded. "I don't remember the bad stuff, just the glitter on her eyes." "That's okay," I said. "You can keep that part." She smiled, satisfied with that answer, and dove back into her syrup-soaked stack. Later, I tucked her in her fingers, curled around the stuffed giraffe she'd named Juniper. As I turned off the light, she whispered, "You never left. I never will." Downstairs, I poured a glass of wine and stepped onto the back patio. The city murmured softly around me. Subway hums, distant horns, the occasional bark from a nearby dog. No chaos, no lies, no staged photographs. Just life. I thought of everything Mireille had chased, fame, illusion, applause. And I thought of everything she'd lost trying to keep it. Then I looked at what I'd built, a daughter who trusted me, a business rebuilt on purpose, a self I could actually recognize in the mirror. People often expect victory to be loud, explosive, flashbulbs, and applause. But the real victories, they happen quietly, in small kitchens, in bedtime routines, in learning to love the ordinary again. And as I stood there, glass in hand, heart unburdened, I realized I didn't need the world to know I had won, because I already had. Some betrayals are loud, shattering moments that rip through the soul like thunder. Others are quiet, gradual, a slow erosion of trust, of dignity, of dreams once shared. But the pain, whether sudden or subtle, always leaves its mark. And in that silence, in the hollow that remains, one must choose what comes next. This story wasn't about destruction. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about reclamation, the slow, steady rebuilding of a self once buried beneath someone else's narrative. It was about choosing peace over performance, truth over illusion, presence over applause. In life, we often confuse resilience with noise, but the strongest victories don't always echo. Sometimes they arrive in stillness, in knowing you walked away with your soul intact. In becoming someone your past would barely recognize, not out of bitterness, but out of growth. Because real strength isn't in what we prove to others. It's in what we refuse to let break us. So, if you've ever felt discarded, deceived, or diminished, remember this. Your silence can speak louder than their spotlight. Your healing is your headline. And your peace. That's the loudest triumph of all. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you or reminded you of your own strength, please share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next powerful story. Until then, take care, and never stop writing your own comeback.